What's going on, everybody? It is that time again, the Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 199 on this Tuesday, August 12th, 2025. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green with you, 18 days away from kickoff. We're into the teens now, under 3 weeks, getting very, very close. We're in the midst of fall camp, pushing forward, getting closer and closer to the start of the season. It's been a crazy 24 hours around here. We'll try and recap at least a little bit of everything that's been going on last, again, not even 24 hours, like 12 hours or so, 15, 16 hours or so. We'll get into all of it in some capacity. Position preview series, going to keep that rolling today on the defensive side, defensive ends and linebackers. The AP poll came out yesterday, and we're still in the midst of fall camp. So we've got a lot to talk about on a Tuesday. A reminder, as always, to subscribe to us at Sooners Illustrated. Promo code SoonersPod60 right now, 60% off. Tons of VIP content there for you. We're in the midst of fall camp. Season's coming up. We have tons of scrimmage intel from Saturday. More to come as fall camp continues to go on. There's a lot happening right now. You want to be sure to be dialed into us at Sooners Illustrated. If you use the promo code SoonersPod60 right now, you get 60% off a year subscription to Sooners Illustrated. So do it. Be aboard with us. It's going to be a fun season. It's been a crazy fall camp so far, crazy last couple of, not even a couple of days, last day. A lot there for you as Sooners Illustrated. Guys, before we get into position preview, and like I said, we have the AP poll and fall camp. We have a lot to talk about. It's been an insane 24 hours. Most of you fans know what's been going on. Let's get it out of the way right at the top. We are obviously very well aware of the John Mateer stuff. If you didn't see it yesterday, it caught like wildfire last night. Some old Venmo transactions from John Mateer that were literally labeled sports gambling from 2022 when he was a redshirt freshman at Washington State.
Well, true freshman, but yeah.
Exactly. He was redshirting the season, is what I meant to say. You're correct. So, yeah, obviously not a good thing. Those are real. I know people were like, is it Photoshop? It was on his account. You could go back and see it yourself. Not anymore. It's been scrubbed since, but obviously way too late. Obviously, everyone saw it. It was everywhere on social media last night. Tom has a story kind of detailing what we know about it right now. We're in Sooners Illustrated. I don't think we're going to get too in-depth of it here because we just don't really know much about this right now other than the fact that OU is aware of it. It's not clear if, like, the NCAA is really doing anything about it at this point. I don't think yet. This is all new, right? I mean, just kind of caught fire last night, Monday night. But obviously we're aware of it. Again, it's on the website. I don't know if anything's going to come of it. I tend to think probably not if it's just limited to the Venmo stuff. But, it's always a scary thing. Tom, you have the story. I mean, feel free to chip in. Again, it just kind of like it's so early in the process of this. I know that there is an expectation that, John or Oklahoma will address it at some point in a statement. As of now, as we record the show right now, they have not. That could happen during the show. It could happen before the show gets put up. But as of now, they have not. But they are aware of it. It's just kind of one of those things. Like I don't really know what to make of it right now. It's just kind of early on in all of this, right?
Yeah, and Mateer has reportedly, according to ESPN and our friends over at On3, that, he has denied being involved in any sports betting. And it's important to note, like, those, like, transaction lines, like, you can put anything there.
Anything,
yeah. You look at the other things that he had on there, it's, like, a lot of, like, silly, like, college guy stuff. Like, I know when I send transaction to my friends, I send, goofy jokes or emojis and, like, rarely ever put what the actual transaction was for. So like if it's just limited to these Venmo transactions, I think it'd be hard to prove that it was actually for anything related to sports betting. Though, there's that one transaction that, said sports gambling, parentheses, USC versus UCLA. And it was the day after those two teams played. But yeah, I mean, like barring a paper trail or like a DraftKings account or something that's linked back to John Mateer in some way, I don't think that there's much that can come from this. If, he's denying it, if, they reach out to his, it looked like it was a former temmate of his that was an offensive lineman at Washington State with him, who I believe is currently at Abilene Christian. If those two guys deny that there was like anything nefarious I can't imagine that there's anything else that comes with it. But it's important to note, like, sports gambling is legal in Washington in a very limited capacity, basically only on tribal casinos. So this is while he was a true freshman at Washington State. So it happened 3 years ago. If it was sports betting, he was of legal age, 18 years old on that front. But NCAA rules do prohibit student athletes from betting on sports, particularly sports that they including sports they participate in. It doesn't look like he was betting on his games or anything if he was indeed doing that. And the penalties can vary. I think one of them is if it was a wager less than $200, like it's you just have to take a education course basically, and from there it can vary percentage wise on potential suspensions if the NCAA finds any wrongdoing there. And again, we're a long way from that. As far as we know, the NCAA is not involved. Oklahoma has not officially commented on it. We reached out for comment to the athletics department, to the compliance department. Haven't heard anything on that front. But it's just at the very worst, it's a distraction for Oklahoma with less than 3 weeks to go before the season.
Sure. Yeah. I think too, what people need to realize too about sports gambling with the athletes in itself, even if you don't, gamble on your own game, you can still owe debts to somebody else. Maybe you can't pay the debt and you're an athlete. So won't you go out there and throw 2 interceptions for me and your debt's paid, basically. I'm not saying that's what John Materian thinks is going to happen, but just that plays a part into why it's a significant thing. So you want to really pay attention to it. And so that's one of the things you got to realize about it.
Yeah. So we'll also let you know as more comes of it, if anything. Again, the expectations that Oklahoma will address it in some capacity, or John will himself, or both, right? We're in the middle of fall camp. Like, obviously, we're going to talk to John Mateer and Brent Venables again before too long, and it's going to come up, obviously, but we'll let you know. It's not anything that anybody wants to talk about or deal with, but it's in reality. So that was last night. Also, that was after Oklahoma did not get Davian Gross, who is a guy we've talked about, Colin and I, for months on the show. Oklahoma was in good position even yesterday morning, felt confident all day. Florida comes in seemingly late at the final hour and finds a way to flip Davian Gross, a huge gut punch on the recruiting trail. They swing it back today by getting Jake Kroll, who obviously, again, another guy we talked about for months, the highest priority guy in the class after Bo Bentley. He's now the highest rated guy in the class, the elite edge rusher. He commits Oklahoma today on the Pat McAfee show over Texas, a direct Red River win on the recruiting side. So it was a rough night last night, but they get some huge good news today. It vaults them up double-digit spots in the class rankings off one guy. That's the level of player that Jake Kroll is, again, the highest rated guy in the class. So a very different feeling on the recruiting side in the last 12 hours or so. And we'll get into that obviously much more with Colin later this week. He'll have the full context of everything that happened with Gross, and obviously he can very well get into the Kroll stuff as well, because nobody knows this stuff better than our own Colin Kennedy. But yeah, guys, it's bad news, potentially horrible news, and then great news all in the last 12 hours. It's been that's this beat, man. That's Oklahoma football. It's always something. But
I was texting a friend earlier, who was asking me, about this and just talking. I was like, I just want a singular season where the team I cover is just normal.
It's not possible. Not in the SEC. You've been in the SEC too long.
Yeah.
But yeah, so crazy stuff. And we'll get into that more. And there's stories on the website, obviously, on Davian Gross from our Florida site and kind of all of that. And certainly today from Colin on Kroll. And like I said, it's been a crazy 24 hours or so around here. But with all that in mind, and again, we'll keep you updated on the Mateer stuff as it comes up. And if something pops during the show, we'll bring it up. And we'll obviously get into the recruiting stuff heavily with Colin later this week. Let's get into fall camp in our position preview series, which we've been doing. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. Only a handful of positions left. Timely one here with Jake Kroll hopping in today. Let's do defensive ends. Why not? Good timing. We talked to Miguel Chavis last week. We talked to Bill Beatonville yesterday. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the show. Getting a chance to talk to position coaches has been awesome so far in fall camp. Defensive ends, guys. This is a position that like defensive tackles. Feels like it's in a great place. I think for my money, it has the single best player on the team, and Mason Thomas, certainly a chance to be a first-round NFL draft pick. Someone who had a great season last year, took over games at times last year, and it feels like if he puts it all together, it can be an absolute monster this year for Oklahoma's defense in 2025. PJ Adebawore, Danny Okoye, you bring in Marvin Jones, Taylor Wine has got all this hype going around him right now. The talent is apparent in this group. You kind of need someone else to prove it along with Mason Thomas, but the options are plentiful. This position, guys, feels like one that's in a really good spot, and they continue to recruit as well as anyone. Again, just getting Kroll today, great timely there, but you talk about some of the other guys in this class with Norman and Nelson, obviously. There's a lot more really good talent on the way. Miguel Chavis has got this thing cooking at defensive ends right now. It is definitely a strength for Oklahoma and continues to look like it will be, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this, when we were talking about the defensive tackles last week, but this was like right after we had spoken to Miguel Chavis after practice last Monday. And like just seeing how far that room has come from, year one of him here to year 4, like on average, they're like 10 pounds heavier at defensive end. They're bigger. The talent level in that room. Obviously, you discussed Mason Thomas, an All SEC performer last season. He's on all the preseason watch lists for all the big awards so far this season. Potential first round draft pick, and then the talent there too. Like you mentioned, PJ Adebawore. Former 5-star prospect. Marvin Jones Jr., former 5-star guy who won a national title at Georgia a few years back. Taylor Wine, a good developmental story within the program, going from a 3-star to a guy that's, generating a whole lot of buzz right now. And then someone like, Danny Okoye, who in year 2 has seemingly taken just a ridiculous jump from where he was when he was redshirting last season to, being a potential rotation piece this year. I think they're in really good position here. Obviously we're really high on the defensive tackle room, really high on the defensive line as a whole. So I assume that we're all going to have pretty high grades for this defensive end room. It's just a matter of, who is going to be that running mate for Mason Thomas and kind of complement him on the other side. But there's no shortage of talent and options to kind of fill that role.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, as you said it, those 5 guys that you mentioned, you just feel comfortable with those guys being out there just based on everything that you've heard throughout camp, especially with the development of Taylor Wine, who Miguel Chavis kind of said was like another coach on the staff because of how much knowledge that he has to bring to this group. And then you have the athleticism of Danny Okoye, PJ. Obviously, we've seen, glimpses of what he can do. Can he put it together this season? There's all those type of things that you add with the experience of Marvin Jones Jr. and just what Mason Thomas has done just this last season and being possibly, like Josh said, the best player on this team this time around. So it's a really good group overall, just based on those 5 guys that you really hear about. So I think it's going to be a high score, like you said, Tom. It's going to be high between all of us. Yeah,
at the risk of not trying to be prisoner of the moment of the fact that they just got an elite edge rusher today, right? Who's the highest guy in their class now, in Kroll, who we've talked about already. I got to think Miguel Chavis's approval rating is as high as any on this coaching staff right now. Recruiting well, producing high-end talent. Again, Mason Thomas, Ethan Downs obviously had a great run under Chavis, and he helped guys like Trace Ford. Like, they've really gotten the most out of this position, it feels like, the last couple of years, and it's in position to be a great strength this year. It was kind of interesting him talking about last week, PJ Adebawore, because he's the X factor in the group, right? Danny Okoye is going to year 2. I think everyone's excited for him and this jump that he could maybe make. And Marvin Jones comes in Florida State; he's going to have a role. Taylor Wine is kind of like this trendy guy. PJ Adebawore is the one that OU fans want to see be a guy. This is a guy who's a former 5-star going to year 3. He clearly is just a different human when you look at the size and the length. The arms go forever. And it's kind of like go time for him, right? It's year 3. Like, this is the time to really carve out a big role for yourself. And Miguel Chavis talked about how Mason, battled injuries, and all of a sudden it came together for him. And it felt like, without saying it, he was kind of saying the same is on the table for PJ, this time around. So he's the big one. He's the big question mark. If you told me PJ Adebawore has a strong season, this position could be the best on the entire roster, right? He's kind of the one that makes it go one way or another. Kind of same thing I was saying about David Stone a little bit with the D tackles. Like, this is the guy that can really swing it to be in a special group if he has a big year, for sure.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy and kind of turn that corner, they'll be in really good position. Obviously, last year, he dealt with the ankle injuries. I think he had a turf toe injury too that kind of held him back. So while he was the fifth guy in that rotation at defensive end, like he just, he had 6 tackles or something like that. Like he wasn't producing at a high level. Obviously, the talent is there. It's just a matter of getting everything to click for him and staying healthy. But again, you talk about just the overall depth of this room. Marvin Jones Jr. has looked a lot better in fall camp than he did in the spring, by all accounts. That's really good. You're kind of feeling more at home than he did when he first got here. He's the oldest guy in that room, really. It's him and R. Mason Thomas. But he's a newcomer, but he's also got he's got SEC experience. He played at Florida State last year, even though they were really bad. He had a pretty productive season there. But that playoff experience, that SEC championship experience, that NCAA championship experience, like that should carry some weight in that room. Having a presence like him, who again he has a lot of talent there too, as a former 5-star guy. It's just a matter of can they get these guys to click? And like, even if you're not going to have another R. Mason Thomas on the line, it's like almost like a Moneyball approach. Can you recreate him in the aggregate with the other pieces around him and get a solid rotation there? Because what you're going to get from R. Mason Thomas this season.
On that, but before we give the confidence score, do you guys have a favorite for defensive end too? If you had to pick one, because I feel like there's an argument for really all 4 of the guys we've talked about here. We all know R. Mason is the guy in the room. That's as obvious as it gets in any position. But he needs a running mate. Do you have a pick for either who you think it's going to be or who your preference it would be to be kind of that next guy?
I think right now it'll be Marvin Jones Jr.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the preference as well. I think just like we talked about his experience and what he can do, having a guy like him on the other side of R. Mason Thomas just sounds like scary for a quarterback on the opposing side of it. Like that's a really good situation for OU. I know Taylor Wine has got so much, growth and development over the time, but I think he would be a solid rotational piece on that defensive end situation. So,
yeah, I don't disagree. I wonder if it'll look different by the end of the year because it feels like Danny Okoye is a guy who's just, it's just climbing for him. If by end of the year that snap count just keeps going up and up and up for him, and again. Not to be a dead horse, but PJ, man, can he get in there and have a big role? It's gonna be huge.
That DN2 spot on the depth chart. Like again, I would not be surprised if we're sitting here, a week and a half, 2 weeks from now, whenever that official depth chart comes out.
Right,
it's an or between any of Marvin Jones Jr., PJ, Taylor Wine. Like I could see any of them starting right now, but if you asked me to name a starter right now, I would still lean Marvin Jones Jr. as the guy to trot out there in week 1.
Which is why we're so high on this room, because it could go either way and you would be fine.
Yeah, it's a great spot. Let's do the confidence score. I always forget to double check who's starting. Where are we at? This is position 7, which would mean we're back to where we started, right? So which
that'd be me then.
So,
yeah. It's tough. Like again, I'm really high on them. I'll probably just settle in at a 9. Again, I think R. Mason Thomas is the biggest difference maker on this defense, and I really like the pieces they have around him. But I still need to see those 4 guys go out there and prove it, because PJ hasn't quite taken that jump yet through his first 2 years. We haven't really seen Taylor Wine, we haven't seen Danny Okoye, we haven't seen Marvin Jones Jr. in an Oklahoma uniform. I like the potential of the room, and I think R. Mason Thomas carries a lot of weight there. But until those other 4 go out there and prove it, like I can't give it much higher than that. But again, we talked about this defensive line and the potential for it to be, one of the best in the SEC, and as a result, one of the best in the country. I really like the pieces they have there.
Mm-hmm. I'm right there with you, Tom. I'm at a 9. That was what I was going to say going into this. It's like I think the overall greatness of the defensive tackle room, or what the perceived overall greatness of the defensive tackle room, is going to help these guys as well overall, just what they can do on the inside, because you're going to see a lot of what they can do on 3rd down, 4th down, maybe in the pass rush. situation, which is what R. Mason Thomas was just phenomenal at in late game situations last year. I mean, that's where you see this guy shining. And I think that's going to help them overall, even when they have some inexperience, like you said, with some of the younger guys there. Being in the moment there, you're going to have it where the defensive tackle set up something for you, and you could just really be great in that spot. And I think they can do that based on what we've seen from their athleticism, from just what we've been hearing from the coaches and everything like that. So I think a 9 is a good number for them.
Yeah, I'm right with you guys. I'm going to go 9.25, 9.25. I'll give it a slight bump up for the fact that I think, again, that they have the best player on the roster in terms of pure talent right now, R. Mason Thomas. And if you just can get 2, obviously certainly 3 if you have 2 deep on both sides, but if you can just get 2 of that other group of 4 to be productive and consistent and healthy and having strong seasons, you're going to have quite the presence on the edge all season. So really a big fan of this group. 9.25 for me with R. Mason and Marvin Jones at the top, and then Okoye, PJ, Wine, that group after. It's in a really good place. One of the best positions on the roster, no doubt. And again, with a lot of momentum because they continue to recruit well and add talent year after year after year to Miguel Chavis's room. So 9.25 for me.
How often is your best overall player and then your most important player 2 different guys on the team? Like John Matera obviously seems like the most important player on this squad. Yeah. You could see R. Mason being just the best on the team. I mean, how often does that happen like this?
Yeah, I mean, quarterback's always.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough to go past quarterback for most important, but pure ability at their spot. Hard to argue against R. Mason. We'll stick on defense. Let's go over to linebackers. Interesting group here because you've had Danny Stutzman leading this position forever, and he's obviously no longer here. Career's over. He's in the NFL now. Kip Lewis back, leading the charge. One of the top kind of faces of this program right now. Kobe McKenzie certainly right there as well. Samuel Masigo continues to climb. They go add in a Kendall Daniels, who has got everyone very excited about the potential there and a potential cheetah role, obviously, for him. Also, you have new management at the position because you bring in Nate Dreiling and Wes Goodwin's coaching up cheetahs and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a different look kind of overall at this position, even though there are some similar names that we're used to in recent years, but it's kind of thin-ish. They've only signed 1 linebacker each of the last 2 years. Marcus James, in-state guy of a year ago, who looks great, but he's a true freshman. And then James Nesta, who's going into year 2. So it's kind of thin-ish. I mean, they have Owen Heineke as well, who's another in-state guy who, is floating around, obviously, on the roster. But the top-end talent, guys, feels awesome here. But it feels like you're just 1 or 2 injuries away from kind of all of a sudden being like, okay, we are really inexperienced suddenly at the linebacker spots. But the top end talent is as good as any position on the roster, you would think here, right? And obviously with Dreiling leading the charge there, it's a fun position and one that is certainly still in a very good place, even despite Danny Stutzman no longer being in it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that top line. It's hard to argue against the strength there with when you bring back a Kip Lewis who had a really strong season in his first full year as a starter. Obviously, those 2 pick sixes that loomed large in the 2 SEC wins. He was one of the team's leading tacklers up there last season too. Just a really good physical linebacker. Kobe McKenzie was number 3 in that rotation with him and Danny Stutzman last year. So he has plenty of experience too. Him and Kip came in together. They have a really good rapport running inside there. Samuel Masigo moving over from Cheetah to Mike linebacker in the spring gives them a little bit more experience depth inside, even though he's settling into a new role from, playing out in the slot more. Kendall Daniels, another guy that's, just doing a little bit of everything. But when you combine, those inside linebacker spots with the cheetah spot, I think you have to feel really strong about that linebacker room, especially when you look at, you mentioned the coaching, like you're bringing in Nate Dreiling, who was a defense coordinator last year at Utah State and was hired at Arkansas State before joining OU. You have Wes Goodwin, who succeeded Brent Venables as defense coordinator at Clemson, and then you have Brent Venables, who's going to have his fingers all over that room too, because that is his position by nature. Like you have 3 guys with defensive coordinator experience overseeing that group. So they're getting plenty of good feedback. They're getting great coaching there. And I thought it was really telling, when we spoke to Brent Venables last week that, he's going to be critical of his defense always. Like he's never going to be satisfied, but I'm sure he's hypercritical about the linebacker position because again, that's the position he came up coaching. So to hear him say that he feels a lot better about the depth there, through the first week and a half of fall camp than he did coming out of the spring, I think that says a lot about just his overall confidence in that group moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's obviously the linebacker position has got a lot to do with how you read the plays and before the snap, learning those keys and things like that. I think a lot of these guys can do that. I mean, we talked about it with Kendall Daniels, just the athlete that he is and the massive stature that he has, but he's a guy that has studied a lot of different playbooks in his line of work so far, different positions. A guy like that going to begin to like beef up that room, as you say, with Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie coming back. I think Kobe McKenzie is a very, very smart guy. I think he's underrated actually overall because Kip Lewis and Samuel Masiga were the ones that are on the Buckets, preseason and watch list. They didn't have McKenzie on there. So it's like, okay, let's see what happens. I think he's underrated. So it's guys like that. I mean, the room it can go either way for them, but I think the intelligence is there. I think the coaching staff is there, which is going to help out a lot with reading the play beforehand and getting out there and making it happen.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention like all the other names that they've been rotating in there at that cheetah spot, which is obviously a hybrid role and just very versatile. The types of bodies they have there between Kendall Daniels, Kendall Dolby, who's working out at cornerback too when he's in there, but obviously played very well in the cheetah spot. Reggie Powers, who's pushing for a job at safety and is going to get a lot of reps at cheetah too. Jeremiah Newcomb, another guy that's kind of been moonlighting between corner and cheetah in fall camp. Like they've got bodies there. And it's just an intriguing room top to bottom, I think, even though you lose a, consensus All-American in Danny Stutzman.
Right. Yeah. It's those people who have listened to this show regularly or watch obviously know that I'm all in on Kendall Daniels. Just think there's so much potential there. And the guy's just a Terminator out on the practice field. It's hard not to, your eyes just go to him every time. Feels like a perfect fit for the cheetah. Obviously, Samuel Masigo continues to be a guy that feels ready to explode, going to year 3 for him. It's a position that's in a good spot, I think. It's a little, again, are those young guys ready if needed? I don't know. But the top end is as in good of a spot as really any position on the roster, it would seem. And obviously, Kip Lewis is right up there we talked about our Mason best player on the team. Kip Lewis is right in that conversation too. Top 3, 4, 5 guys for sure. Let's do the rating. Where are we at linebackers? This is an interesting one because again, everything we just kind of talked about, where it's really good at the top, but if there's an injury or two, where do you kind of feel it? How are we feeling about linebackers, James? You're starting it. It's an interesting spot. It is. I'm curious to see which way you guys go with this one.
Yeah, it's a wait and see type of position for me this time around. I'm at an 8.3, just trying to figure out where these guys can go. I mean, like, in the middle there. Because again, I mean, if Kip Lewis really performs the way he did during SEC play against those Alabama teams, I mean, it could be a phenomenal year for this group overall if he stays healthy. With Kobe McKenzie out there helping out as well. I mean, like I said, I like the intelligence of Kobe McKenzie. I like the way he commands the defense when he's out there as well. So just seeing how those guys can stay situated and stay together, and pretty much if there's no injuries, it can be higher. But I think that's where it's at right now for me, 8.3.
Yeah, you guys know I like to get rule exact with mine and get some decimals. Not here, though. I'm going with a nice clean 8. 8 on the button. I just, I really like the position overall. I definitely have some mild concerns with injuries here. I mean, and this position has not had injuries, relatively speaking. But if Kip Lewis goes down, if, Kendall Daniels goes down, I mean, one or two guys can really throw this thing out of whack, I feel like. Even if Omasigo ends up starting over McKenzie and then McKenzie goes down, like all of a sudden you're too deep. You're going to rotate these guys, obviously. They're all going to play. And so, there's some mild concern there, I feel like, for me, with the overall depth of position. But it's still really strong. I mean, I'm still giving it an 8. Still feel really good about it. Kip, Omasigo, Daniels, McKenzie is a really nice quartet right there. But if you lose one or two of them, where does that leave you? That's kind of what keeps me from going a little bit higher. But the core group there, really strong, and I feel pretty good about it overall with an 8.
Yeah, I'm there with you on an 8.
Yeah.
As far as the depth part, I mean, you can say that about just about any position. Like if one or two
Most.
key guys go down, like there's going to be concerns. But you look at how Oklahoma has kind of played that linebacker spot, and the first 3 years with Brent Venables, they've mostly relied on a 3-man rotation for those two inside spots. So I think having 4 guys that they really like between Kim and Kobe and Sammy and Kendall gives them a little bit more flexibility, especially when you have so many intriguing pieces at that cheetah spot where if you need Kendall Daniels to shift inside and play a lot more there, you don't hesitate having a Reggie Powers, a Kendall Dolby, a Jeremiah Newcomb type step into that cheetah role and not have any drop off there. So again, I'm with you. I think the thing for me is like just listening to Brent Venables last week, being so much less concerned about the depth there than where he was coming out of the spring. I think that just says a lot about how much they've developed in the 4 or 5 months since then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you put that out, Tom. I mean, in the age is it's a solid room. I mean, it's not like I think the way we spoke about it, it made it seem like it was low, but that's not the case. It's a solid room. That's what we've been seeing. And so that's where we're at on it, I think.
No doubt. So another good position. I mean, pretty much everyone on defense, you feel pretty good. We'll shift into the secondary next week. Last 2 cornerbacks and safeties. A lot of really interesting young names to talk about in that cornerback room. Certainly we'll do that next week. In the safety room, obviously moving on in the post-Billy Bowman era for that position. We'll get into that again next week as we get our final 2 positions on the defensive side. And then the week after that will be the first game week. And we'll be kind of locking in our final season predictions and stuff like that. Then it's about that time. We're down to the nitty-gritty here. 18 days until kick.
Man.
With that in mind, we're 18 days until kick. AP poll came out yesterday, which is always another one of those like, oh, we're getting real close now when we actually have the rankings to start the year off with. They don't really mean anything, but they also kind of do, right? I mean, they do sort of influence how the season goes in the early part of the year and the rankings down the road. Oklahoma, 18 in the preseason poll to start off the season. About what we kind of thought. They were unranked in the coaches poll, which surprised me. This seems about more right, in my opinion, at 18. More notable probably than that is that there are 7 teams on this thing that OU plays this year, which is tied for the most in college football, which is an outrageous number. You play 12 games and 7 of your opponents are in the rankings right now. Texas at 1, Alabama 8, LSU 9, South Carolina 13, Michigan 14, Ole Miss 21, Tennessee 24. And then even the other 2 SEC teams, Auburn, Missouri, received votes as well in this thing also. So not that we didn't already know it, but the schedule, obviously, it is what it is. It's very tough. That's the SEC. That's what you signed up for. Any grand thoughts or takeaways here? Again, I feel like 18 is probably about right for a starting point for this Oklahoma team with all the new things they brought in.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 spots lower than where they entered last season at. I think it's fair. Again, they got a lot to prove offensively, but, between, John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle, Jaden Knott, and some of those pieces that you're bringing back there too, I think there's reason for optimism. But again, it's a prove-it year for Oklahoma. And, as far as, 7 ranked teams, I mean, Florida's got 7 ranked teams on their schedule. Mississippi State does too. Like, it is a grueling conference schedule. And I think the most interesting note I think I saw yesterday, I forgot who pointed it out, but I think the last team to win a national championship ranked outside of the preseason top 10 was Florida State in 2013. Again, most of that was, Florida State was the last year of the BCS. And then, up until last year, it was always a 14 playoff. So it's a small sample size when you have an expanded playoff and room for teams to compete there. But, I think Oklahoma going in the season number 18, they'll have plenty of chances to prove themselves and, rack up some signature wins and kind of see how they stack up against the rest of this league and the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know you mentioned it too about the coaches polls. The first time in 25 years Oklahoma wasn't ranked in that. But I feel like the coaches really went off of last year's record in their predictions for this season, because none of the teams in there that were ranked had a losing record. Like Oklahoma was a 6 and 7 team, and they were the first ones out. That shows still a little bit the weight of Oklahoma there. And so in this AP poll, you kind of can see how the writers and media are really seeing Oklahoma and what they can bring this season because of, like you guys mentioned, the additions that they added, like Jaden Odd, John Mateer, those guys to this offense, and trying to bring it apart. So that's pretty much where I'm seeing it right now. It's a good spot for Oklahoma, a good solid spot to either prove the doubters wrong or not do that at this point in time. So it's a good overall ranking for Oklahoma going into the season.
26th straight year ranked in the preseason, extends that streak. And Michigan, like we said, number 14. Both teams have gimmies, we'll call it that, in the opener. So should be a top 20 matchup, at least maybe top 15 if there's some carnage around Oklahoma in week 2 in Norman. That game is going to be nuts. We already knew that, but to get that number on it, because I really didn't know how high Michigan was going to be. That was a little higher than I honestly kind of thought going in. And so there you go. A top 15 opponent is going to be rolling in Norman in week 2. So get ready for that. That's going to be a scene coming up. 25 days away from that game.
That's going to be fun. That defense versus whatever Oklahoma's offense is going to put together could be a really, really good situation. Because if Oklahoma lights it up in the opener, it's like that's going to be a really good marketable game, I think, overall, just based on those two units.
It's also the only ranked matchup of the week right now. And again, it's week 2, so you wouldn't think the rankings will change that much before then. So we kind of, again, something we kind of already knew, but it just reinforces probably pretty clearly the marquee game of the week in college football. So I imagine a lot of hoopla is going to be in Norman surrounding that
college game day.
Exactly. I'm thinking it's already got the ABC primetime slot. It feels you can put it almost in marker. It's going to be game day. It's going to have a lot of attention in Norman that weekend. A chance for OU to make a statement on national TV or to be bad. So we'll talk about that more when we get there. But big one.
Back to your point, Josh, is one of the most important games on the schedule. I think you said it was the most important. So
it's up there.
Yeah.
It's got to be real high, real high. So we're continuing to navigate through fall camp. Again, we mentioned 18 days away. Kind of just wrapping up here with a little bit of fall camp stuff. Yesterday we talked to Bill Bedenbaugh along with a bunch more players. The access has been great this fall camp. So shout out to Oklahoma for that. Great to catch up with Bill yesterday. First time we talked to him in a couple of years, and he was awesome. One of the best interviews we've had in a while. He was very open and honest kind of about just everything. Had great things to say about Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje, the freshmen. Everyone excited. Obviously, guys, they had their first scrimmage on Saturday. Again, a reminder that you can subscribe with SoonersPod60, the promo code. We had great intel over there. Colin Kennedy, myself, able to get out to our members a little bit of kind of what all went down on Saturday. We won't get into every single note from the scrimmage, but in a general sense, defense won the day. Not probably a huge shock. Offense was missing some key guys. They're being very cautious, something we've talked about a lot. Jay Knott, Deion Burks, those guys did not participate in the scrimmage. Offensive line was shuffling around a lot. So the defense won the day. It wasn't all bad offensively. There were some big plays, but defense did win the day. Is there anything from either the scrimmage or talking to Bill Bedenbaugh yesterday or any of the players that we got to talk to yesterday as well that kind of stuck out to you guys want to bring up on the show here? It kind of feels like offensively finding their footing, some good things, some positive vibes, but still certainly this is a defensive-led team, which, again, is not a shock by any means.
Yeah, I think from speaking with Bill, like he didn't outright say it, but just talking to him, like he sounds more comfortable with where this offensive line is, 3 weeks out from the opener than where they were last year. And again, this time last year, they were dealing with some injuries there. Troy Everett wasn't back. Other guys were hurt early in the preseason. Other guys got hurt in the opener, and they had to shuffle a lot. I know they've had some, nicks and bruises here in fall camp. That is part of the reason why they've shuffled there. But he sounds pretty comfortable with the progress that they've shown through these first 9 practices and just, really since the spring, especially guys like Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje, who, he said are as good as any 18-year-olds that he's had come through the program, which says a lot, when he's coached guys like Creed Humphrey and, had 2 first-round picks and, a dozen other guys that have been drafted since he's been here. He said both those guys are going to play. How much and whether they start remains to be seen. But I mean that tracks with what we've seen and what we've heard through fall camp so far. Is like these dudes are impressive. They have NFL talent. We saw Ryan Foje get some first team work early in fall camp. He's been rotating there with Febechi Wiwu at right guard. Michael Fasusi's had his opportunities too. There's a little bit more depth at left tackle. with Jacob Sexton kind of settling in there, Logan Howland coming back from, his offseason shoulder procedure. But the fact that they feel comfortable throwing those two freshmen into the fire in the SEC right off the bat says a lot about them. And then, just overall the depth of the line, I think he feels a lot better about, Troy Everett, like we discussed, he's the surefire guy at center. Like he's the unquestioned leader of that position group, as Bill Bedenbaugh said. Febechi Wiwu has playing his best ball, which I think a lot of fans are pleased to hear, just because, again, he led the group in snaps and starts last year, but was uneven at times.
Yeah.
So for him to be taking that step and then having good competition at all the other positions, I think just says a lot about, this line is going to be a lot better than where it was last year. How good? We'll see. But I don't think it's going to be a disaster like it was last year.
Yeah, I think that the overall confidence in the offensive line was the biggest story of the day overall. But also, I like what Peyton Bowen has said, the safety coming back this season, said he took the spring off for a reason, which was all about resting his, his sprained ankle and things like that, trying to get back from that injury, which is something he hasn't had to do before. Typically, he's been able to play through all of the bumps and bruises that he's faced throughout high school and just still been the phenomenal athlete that he's always been. And he wasn't able to be what he wanted to be last season because he had so many different small injuries here and there. Now, he still, notched 34 tackles and still was a productive player on the squad, but he wants to be, the 5-star guy, the big guy on the team. So that's where it's getting back to that. So just having him take that off, and now he's saying he's 100% healthy, you could see more of that maybe this season. So that gives some optimism for him overall and overall safety room as a whole, because Billy Bowman's gone. Somebody has to step up.
Yeah.
Robert Spears-Jennings is a part of that group. Peyton Bowen is there as well.
Yeah, and we'll get into it when we do the safeties preview next week. But yeah, it feels like Peyton is kind of become the forgotten man over there a little bit. To your point, he has never really been healthy the entire time he's been here. He's been playing through a lot of injuries the last couple of years, and there's not nearly as much, I feel like, fan heat on him as certainly with PJ, because Peyton has played a big role. But, Reggie Powers is the trendy name, and we're all excited about Michael Boganowski, and like Robert Spears-Jennings is the guy at the top. And it's like Peyton Bowen's still there, and very interested in what kind of a year he can have if he's at 100% throughout the year, because we haven't really ever seen that. And on that note, speaking about 100%, great to catch up with Deion Burks yesterday. Obviously, he's one that OU fans are just dying to be healthy. And right, I mean, he's been nicked up in fall camp. He's been kind of in and, hasn't been practicing a ton. I just mentioned he didn't participate in the scrimmage on Saturday. But like we said, they're being cautious with him. You know what you have in Deion Burks. He's a known commodity. So, like, they're trying to just get him to the games healthy. He said yesterday he feels as good as at any time in college. Now, is he just saying that to, like, put fans at ease? Maybe a little. But still, that's a strong statement from him to say, like, I feel great, And so that should help, I think, make fans feel a little better. Because I think OU fans, I get the frustration, but I think they've been a little hard on Deion. He's been hurt. He's been hurt. It's not like, he's been beat up. And so he's got to prove that he can stay healthy. Don't get me wrong. But when the guy's on the field, he clearly is a difference maker. And so hopefully he can stay that way, because he'd be a huge part of this thing if so. And so nice to catch up with him. He's always a great interview. And him saying that really stuck out to me, because, again, was that maybe a little bit of just trying to tell everyone, like, I'm fine, don't freak out about my health right now? Maybe a little of that, but still a strong statement for him to just kind of say straight up, like, I feel really good. So good to hear from that, as we're obviously 2.5 weeks from the opener.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting, hearing him talk about, year one, he was trying to check boxes more so than, like,
that was
his program. It seems like he's more invested overall in the team, and not to say like he wasn't invested in the team doing well, but I think he's taken it to heart a little bit more, like the role that he can play for the program, and not just like what the program can do for him and his NFL aspirations, but to learn that he's giving it his all, feeding into his teammates, trying to be an example for them, but also like learning to take better care of his own body. Like, he can't just like go out there like a machine, he said, and run. Like I think he's taking his recovery process more seriously, getting treatment more seriously, and I think that's going to help him stay on the field more. And again, it's why they're being cautious with him in fall camp here, because they want him healthy. They know that he can be a difference maker in this offense. So I thought that was really interesting talking to him. And then we talked about Bill Bedenbaugh, what he said about the freshmen, but to get to talk to Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje, I mean, I know we spoke to them before the start of spring practices when we got all the freshmen, but I mean, kudos to Brent Venables in Oklahoma, because not every program makes freshmen available, certainly not before they play any games.
Sure.
So to hear from them and get to kind of check in with them, 5-6 months after, they've settled in, really, to see how things are going and, how they feel they've progressed so far in fall camp. I thought was, just a really good opportunity and really good access.
No, really cool. Caleb Williams' first press conference OU was post game of the Alamo Bowl that year. That was the first time we talked to him, because we just, and that's really, honestly, to Tom's point, kind of more the norm. A lot of schools don't really let freshmen do media, so very cool. And like I said before, the access has been great this fall, and more to come on Friday. We don't know exactly who we're getting yet, but there are interviews scheduled for Friday afternoon right now, so keep an eye out on the YouTube channel, certainly, and on the website for full coverage. Again, don't know who we're getting, if we're going to get another position coach or what players or whatever. But more to come on Friday as fall camp continues to kind of wind down. Also, shout out, I didn't realize that Carson Kent and John Mateer are roommates. We found that out.
I was going to say
well.
that. Yeah.
There you go.
I think he's
John
Carson.
Mateer, Tom, you mentioned before that John Mateer said at SC Media Days that he cooks for Giovanni Gibson. Apparently, he cooks for Carson Kent also.
Yes.
He's a chef.
I was going to say that. Carson Kent was the second guy to say that John's a great cook, so.
He's a chef on the grill. Grill.
Yeah. Mateer's on the grill, apparently. Yeah. I wonder if him and Jacob Sexton have had any cook-offs yet, because I know Jacob's a big grill guy too.
Interesting. Have a grill off at some point, but little did we know. Carson Kent, good talker as well, and a guy who I think is in position as anyone in that tight end room, which is that race feels pretty open. But he's right at the top of it right now. Carson Kent, nice scrimmage.
I'm glad you mentioned that. You said Jaren Kanak did really well in the scrimmage as well. So a guy like that, not really sure where he's going to end up, and he looks like he's doing good things out there already.
So, I think for Kanak right now, it's pretty clear, like, he can get open and make plays. It's just can he block well enough to do the position. But I would be surprised at this point, and we'll see. There's still time before the opener, but I think at this point, I feel pretty confident saying that Jaren Kanak will have a role. Yeah. I don't know to what degree. I don't know if he's going to be the starting tight end on the depth chart that we keep referring to. It hasn't come out yet, but I think he's going to be on the field in some capacity. They're going to try and get him the ball, I think.
And on the blocking, and like, he's got the want to. He's got the physicality.
Oh, yeah.
It's just about the technique, because it's a lot different trying to block than trying to shed blocks when you're a linebacker, So if he can get that down, like that, he's going to contribute in some manner. Like you said, it's just a matter of how big is that role. And just one other thing I wanted to touch on from when we spoke to Bill Bedenbaugh, but, he said what everybody's been saying for the last 8-9 months is that Ben Arbuckle is like a young Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, he just straight up said it.
Like we've seen that, like, the comparisons have been obvious. Like, they're both from the Texas Panhandle. Riley was 31 when he got hired at Oklahoma. Arbuckle's 29. Both cut their teeth at smaller programs.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to them talk; they sound very similar. Both have gotten prolific production out of their offenses and their quarterbacks in their careers. So to hear Bill Bedenbaugh be like, he's like a young Lincoln. Like, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that just because the sour taste with how the Lincoln Riley era kind of ended here. But for him to be like, he's as good as any offensive mind that he's seen in his career, I think speaks volumes about just the confidence they have in this offense going into the season.
No doubt. Great interview with Bill.
Yeah.
Great to catch up with Bill. Been a couple of years. He was great. He was great, and he looks great. Shout out Bill too. He's a different man. Right.
Yeah, the diet is phenomenal. It works. I mean, he looks great.
It's incredible. Hopefully more to come with position coaches throughout the rest of fall camp. We'll see again. We don't know for sure, but hopefully, because it's been great so far. We're 2 for 2 with Davis and Bedenbaugh. I think that's it for now. I think Colin and I are planning to do Friday again. I think it just kind of made more sense. So we'll catch you guys then. Again, there's also going to be interviews, stuff on Friday, some more camp coverage. But Colin and I will have to dive into all all there is to get into with Jake Kroll and certainly Davian Gross and kind of what's left in 2026, if anything. We'll decipher that on Friday. And if there is more movement with the Mateer stuff, which you would think there would be by then, we'll probably bring that up as well, I'd imagine. So a lot to get into on Friday. That'll be episode 200, by the way, which is pretty cool as we continue to pile them up. We've been doing it for that long. It's a good sign of something, right? And so we'll talk about that more on Friday. Reminder again, subscribe to us. It's a great time of year. SoonersPod60. Use that promo code. Get 60% off a VIP subscription for a year right now. That's it for now, I believe. Catch up with Colin Kennedy on Friday. The three of us will be back early next week as we do the final couple position previews, kind of start to wrap up fall camp and getting ever so close to that season opener on Saturday, August 30th. For Tom Green, James E. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. Signing up for now. We'll see you next time right back here, as always, on Sooners Illustrated.
See you.